With that track, it was entirely Mike Patton's world, and we're just living in it. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I am Molly, and in this video I am going to be listening to the album Disco Volante by Mr. Bungle. Now so far I've heard Mr. Bungle's debut self-titled album as well as their third studio album California, both of which just brought so much creativity and variety to the table. And you all have been telling me that their second studio album Disco Volante just goes absolutely wild with the experimental quality of it. So yeah, I'm just really excited to check this one out and see what I'm going to think of it. Okay, starting Disco Volante off is track 1, which is called Everyone I Went to High School With Is Dead. There's such an aggressive distortion to this one. It's got this really muffled quality. There's all of this screechiness, like metallicness going on too. Now it's like a total breakdown of everything here at the end. It's like everything's just falling apart. Well, that was track 1. Everyone I Went to High School With Is Dead. What an odd way to get an album started. There was such an oppressive quality to that one. It was like all of this screechy, metallic, banging around almost, and something kind of creepy about its tone too. It was almost like you were trapped, like there was this really panicky sense of trying to escape, kind of like a claustrophobic sound to it almost. But I'm going to move on to track 2, which is called Chemical Marriage. We love the total tone change between 2 tracks with Mr. Bungle. Now this one's got sort of this light-hearted, more uplifted sound to it, kind of a fun quality. There's something very old-fashioned about the sound of this song. Very operatic too, with his vocals. Again, that percussion, it has such a big immensity to its sound. Very echoey. That was track 2, Chemical Marriage. I really liked the laid-back jazziness of that one. There was something very relaxing about it, completely different from that first track that had that panicky sort of like walls closing in on you energy to it. It was like Chemical Marriage, it kind of just smoothed out and relaxed and kind of had this slow meandering quality to it. And then at the very end there, it almost sounded like an excerpt from a cartoon. It just had that effect to it. All right, moving on to track 3 is Carry Stress in the Jaw. I love how kind of pulled in this one is. That was cool, how that vocalization just kind of led right into this little jazz piece going on now. There's so many sounds going on right now. His vocal delivery is so odd. That's an impressive vocalization, how long he drew that out for. It almost sounded like a cat getting strangled.
Quiet, don't tell anybody.
Okay, now we got quite the change up going on.
I know the secret song now.
This almost sounds like Donald Duck a little bit. So random. That was track 3, Carry Stress in the Jaw. Where to begin with that one? That one was just absolute insanity in one track. There were a ton of change-ups throughout that whole thing, but I really liked the one about in the middle of that song where he said the word quiet and the instrumentals did completely stop there for a few seconds, and then there was that total change-up. They kind of kept it pulled in too, which I liked. It kind of gave it this, like I said, sort of atmospheric quality to it, almost like an echoiness a little bit. Up next is track 4, which is called Desert Search for Techno Allah. There's like a really subtle echoiness there with the vocals. Now it's like you're entering a rave at a club or something. It almost sounded like a horse galloping just there. Something with the percussion they were doing, it had that effect to its sound. That is such a cool effect with the percussion. I love that sound. There's something very cinematic about this part of the track here. That was track 4, Desert Search for Techno Allah. I really loved the soundscape of that one. Very appropriate track title in that there were elements of it that reminded me of being in the desert almost. It kind of had like this Middle Eastern vibe to it with the instrumentals and everything. It conjured up images in my head of being out in the desert somewhere. But then it did have that really smooth, modern, electronic quality to it as well. And the percussion too was adding something almost tribal to the soundscape of that one. Just absolutely fascinating to listen to. But moving on to track 5 is Violenza Domestica. It's so cool how all of these effects they do set such a tone for these songs. Like I'm imagining someone sharpening a knife and then using it to pop a balloon just based on these sound effects alone. Sounds like Italian maybe that he's singing in. There's something really ambient about this one, the way they're doing his vocals. They've kind of got this whispered, like slightly ominous quality to them. That was unexpected just there with the piano. was one of the oddest things I've ever heard. That little break there with just his whispered vocals. Well, that was track 5, Violenza Domestica. The tone of that one was very unsettling. It had this really pulled in, kind of creepy restraint to it. They brought a lot of drama to that one, and they were doing some really interesting things with the vocals, like how they would pull it in at times, and it kind of had that echoiness to it as well. But I loved the dynamics with that one, just so much tension almost that they built up with it. All right, I'm going to move on to track 6, which is called After School Special. My mom is better than your mom and dad. It's a very comical, lyrical line there. Once dad hit me so hard and handsome. I love that cello. Here today because she got, she queen, lied to me. This distortion, it almost sounds like a baby crying.
Stop tickling me. Hey, where are you going?
That was track 6, After School Special. Yet again, kind of an unsettling aspect to that song, especially because it immediately follows the last track, Violenza Domestica, and he was talking about his dad hitting him, so implying like domestic violence. I don't know, just a really kind of dark theme to that one lyrically. But continuing on with track 7 is Phlegmatics. Some chanting vocalizations going on here. It's almost reminiscent of being in a church or something. It's got like this really strong, echoey, reverberating quality to it. Man, that guitar, that tone has such an immense heaviness to it. All that distortion. Quite an intense ending to that one, but that was track 7, Phlegmatics. Like I said, those guitars had an amazing distortion to them, just kind of this fuzziness almost. And then the percussion too added this almost militaristic precision to that one as well, and I loved the combination of those two elements. And the atmosphere of that one too, it was like I was standing in a really big, empty stone room. I don't know, there was kind of a dark, ominous tone to it. All right, I'm going to move on to track 8, which is called Meeshka Mow Skwoz. It really does sound like you're in a cartoon with some of these tracks. There's something very playful about them. Again, it just sounded like a cat meowing. I love these vocalizations here. Again, very operatic. gonna say there's about 30 seconds left, and the track sounded like it was ending. Well, that was track 8, Meeshka Mow Skwoz, if I'm saying that right. With that track, it was entirely Mike Patton's world, and we're just living in it. That's what it sounded like anyway. It was like we kind of got transported into Mike Patton's mind. I don't even know what language he was singing in, if it was just some like made up concoction of words. And then the ending too was wild. I thought the track ended, but then I looked down and there was still 30 seconds left, and then sure enough, they brought in that final little surge of energy there. Up next is track 9 called The Bends. This part right here reminds me of Bjork a little bit, with that flute playing. Such a jazziness to this part here with the bass and everything, and that really light, airy percussion. It's like a car crash, just such an abrupt stop. Kind of sounds like someone breathing. Again, there's like this sense of claustrophobia that I have listening to this. It's getting so loud. This track is so interesting. It keeps fading out and then it'll fade back in. It's almost like all of these little mini snippets pieced together into one song.
The Bends.
It sounds like I'm in a cave right now, and there's something very cinematic about it too. That was track 9, The Bends. Man, I was almost getting goosebumps there at the end. Not necessarily in a pleasant way. It was kind of like that noise was just coming at you more and more aggressively. But that song was so complex. I loved how it was like these little individual sections that they kind of pieced together. And there was something very ambient and atmospheric about the whole thing. Not really a whole lot of vocalization going on. It was more just sounds and instrumentation they were using. I think it's interesting too how it's called The Bends, and I know that's a condition that you can get from lack of oxygen, like when you go scuba diving. And there was something kind of watery sounding about that song, especially at the beginning. It kind of had this muffledness to it. It just kind of had that closed in, almost claustrophobic feeling to it. All right, moving on to track 10 is Backstrokin. I love how boingy that effect was. It sounded like a spring or something. There's something really clear about the tone of this one too. That was track 10, Backstrokin. Very odd ending to that one. That whole track was very trance-inducing in a way. It had this sort of relaxing quality to it. I really loved the piano too across that whole thing. And like I mentioned, it did have sort of a clearness to it, like a little bit less of that muffled, sort of haunted, creepy tone. That one just had more of a relaxed, laid-back quality to it. But I'm going to move on to track 11, which is called Platypus. I love how they just have all of these abrupt changes to their music, not only stylistically, but with the rhythm and everything too. It sounded like a gun going off or something, like gunshots being fired. I loved that tone just there from the guitar.
Platypus is the brain's habitat.
This sound, it's like a trumpet or something that's being distorted. It's like the sound is all warped. That was track 11, Platypus. It was almost like bubbles popping there at the very end, and then that Donald Duck sound with his voice came back too. And that song too, they were using a lot of jazzy elements, but they were kind of distorting them at times too, which would almost give it this weird sense of disorientation in a way. It's like the jazzy element would kind of relax you and you'd fall into this pocket in a sense, and then the distortion and the change-ups would kind of rip you out of that, and it kind of gave you this sense of unease. Alright, moving on to the final song on Disco Volante is track 12, which is called Merry Go Bye Bye, and then it says with hidden track noises. So I don't know what I'm in for with this one.
The shining searchlights in the sky, and then I broke my telescope. Bring back the pain of a guy that's never blue.
Again, this almost sounds like a different singer. I don't know, he can just do so many different tones with his voice. It's incredible.
Got me walking into suicide. Merry go.
Wow, that percussion just there, that was so speedy. That's really cool. It was like the percussion just there was alternating between my ears in my headphones, and it almost sounded like gunfire going off. Now it's like a cacophony of radio static just assaulting my ears. That's really cool. And now this song, it's like you're floating up to heaven. There was such a sharp contrast there with the tone change.
You're walking into suicide. Bring back the shade.
Okay, now it sounds like the track ended, but it's only halfway over. So I'm thinking there might be a hidden track at the end. I don't know. Okay, we've got something else starting up now. It sounds almost like they're warming up in the studio. I just have this image in my head listening to this last track here of all the band members in the studio just violently going around and like kicking all of the instruments. That's kind of what it sounds like.
Folks, we got a little problem here.
Well, that was track 12, Merry Go Bye Bye. In true Mr. Bungle fashion, I guess they just decided to end this album on just a lot of craziness going on. I don't know what that hidden track was. It just sounded like them having a lot of fun in the studio, just kind of banging instruments around. But the first half of that song, the actual track, I thought was really cool how they had that transition halfway through and it became really angelic sounding. I loved Mike Patton's voice at that end part too, just very smooth, and it had such a deep, rich tone to it. Well, that concludes my reaction to Disco Volante, the second studio album from Mr. Bungle. The sheer variety of the different styles and genres on this album are truly unparalleled. Mr. Bungle definitely knows how to push the envelope in terms of bringing so many different elements into their music. I really can't pick one favorite track off of this album just because they're all so varied in style and everything. I will say though, I loved the tone of track 4, Desert Search for Techno Allah. That one was a little bit different, very electronic, and it had this amazing smooth kind of cinematic quality to it. And track 5, Violenza Domestica, also kind of stood out to me just because of the sinister quality, like how restrained they kept that track. It was just really dark and kind of haunted with its tone. But yeah, Disco Volante, I've been wanting to check this album out for a long time now, and you guys kept telling me in the comments that I was in for a wild ride with this one, and you definitely were correct in that statement. This thing was just all over the place in the best way possible. But yeah, as usual, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned, and I will see you in the next video.